With all the years of improvements there have been to both hardware and rendering technique, still, nothing neither before nor since has ever been quite as stunning to me as the items in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. No amount of graphical fidelity in the world can compete with the mesmerizing beauty produced by a few simple techniques on modest hardware. Today I'm going to show you how you can recreate this effect in Godot, and you might be surprised at just how simple it is to do. After all, this was running on a Nintendo 64. Here I have my legally distinct spiritual stone. I used a simple icosphere for the gem because I think that has a nice faceted gemstone look already anyway. This part around the outside will be the gold setting. This is a separate object, so when it gets exported it'll have two surfaces, where each can have its own material. I'll export this as an object file, .obj, because that just makes the import and settings pretty simple, and that's what I feel like dealing with. And we'll make this an amethyst. In a new scene in Godot, add a mesh instance 3D, and set the amethyst as the mesh. For my model, surface 0 is the gem. So under Surface Material Override, I'll add a new shader material. Expand that, then add a new shader. And we'll set the type to Visual Shader and the mode to Spatial. And I'm going to call that Gem Reflection Map. So first I'll explain how this effect is actually achieved so that the next steps in the process will make more sense. This was the Nintendo 64. It wasn't really capable of real-time reflections and lighting or ray tracing, but what it could do is reflection mapping. Think of this like a really primitive version of ray tracing, but rather than tracing every ray from the camera and reflecting it off the object into the live environment, we surround the object by a static textured box. Then we map the view from the camera to the texture, reflected off the faces of the object. By selecting the texture and the color carefully, we can get a really convincing effect. So before we continue in Godot, the first thing we need is a gemstone texture. This will represent the little sparkling highlights we see in the gem. And this is just going to be black and white. Create a 64 by 64 image and a black background. On a new layer with a white paintbrush, set the opacity to 60 and add some flex. Add another layer, set the opacity to 20, and do a few more. And then on a third layer, add about 5% opacity, add some more. And now merge all of those layers into a single image. On the original hardware, this image alone would have been enough, but for Godot we'll do a couple extra steps that make our lives easier when it comes to forming the reflection box. Copy the current layer. Increase the canvas size 3 times the width and twice the height. Create a new layer. Select the bucket and set the fill pattern to clipboard image. Make sure the new layer is selected, then fill it with the image we created. Now export that into the Godot project files. I'm going to call it Facets Cube. Now in Godot, select the Facets Cube file and go to the import settings. From the drop-down, select to import this as a cube map. Under Slices, select the arrangement 3 by 2 and click Re-import. Now back to the shader editor. The first thing we'll do is add our parameters. So we're going to add a color parameter and we'll name that color. And add a cube map parameter and call that facets. Next, create a cube map node and set the source dropdown to sample port. Connect the cube map parameter to the cube map node, and then the output of the cube map to the output albedo. In the scene inspector, set the facets cube map as the cube map parameter. Now we're wrapping the gem with the facets texture, but we want to reflect from the camera to the texture, so let's set that up. Add an input from view and another from normal. Connect both of these to a vector op reflect. then use the output of that as the UV input for the cube map. And you'll probably already be pretty surprised by how this looks. Now, add another node for color op and set it to overlay. Connect the cube map output and the color parameter to this node, then connect its output to the output albedo. Then connect the output of the cube map node to the output alpha. And now set the color parameter. I'm going to set this to a kind of purple since this is an amethyst. Now this already looks pretty good, but to boost it even further, under the shader modes in the inspector, disable culling and set the blend type to add. And now under flags, select unshaded. Having seen all of the steps leading up to this, you might be pretty shocked at how the gem actually looks at this point. But we can still take this to the next level. Right now, we have all of these facets or flecks dancing around, but the gem doesn't really look like a solid object. For that, we're just going to add another texture layer for the shine pattern that covers the outside. So back in the image editor, create another 64x64 texture. On the original hardware, this look was completed with a single 16x16 image texture, so we're actually going all out here. As before, black background, and now take the spray can and just swipe a shine pattern around like the glare off a lake. And this doesn't need to be white, it should maybe be just a little bit gray. Like before, bucket fill this pattern onto a 3x2 rectangle, and save it as Shine Cube, and then adjust the import settings again. In the shader editor, add another cube map parameter, name it Shine, add another cube map and set the source to sample port, and connect the cube map parameter and the same reflected UVs. Add a mix node and connect both cube maps. Connect the output of the mix to the color overlay, and then also connect the output of the mix to the output alpha. And now, set the shine parameter to our shine texture. And now you have your final gem look. So let's move on to the metal. Go ahead and duplicate the gem reflection map shader and name it Metal Reflection Map. Under Surface 1 in the inspector, create another new shader material and set the shader to Metal Reflection Map. Expand the shader and reset the blend and cull modes to the defaults. Set the color parameter to something close to gold. And now, set the shine parameter to our shine texture. In the shader editor, remove the facets cube map parameter, the cube map that the facets parameter was connected to, and the mix node. Then connect the output of the remaining cube map to the color overlay. Make sure that the color overlay is connected to the output albedo and that nothing is connected to the output alpha. And that's it, you're done. You can play around with the textures and the values to get the look you want, but at this point you should have something that looks pretty good. I hope you enjoyed this, like and comment if you found it useful, and I'll see you next time.